Good morning. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Oh, here comes Jonas. I'm sure y'all have figured out by now that I forgot to send the homework answers. So we'll go over that real quick. And then I'll email them as well. It's going to take me a little bit of you getting used to this format as well. All right. Let me get my screen going. All right, let's see. Bless you. All righty. So what I'm going to do is, as your method of checking your homework, I'm going to hope that you've already done your homework. So go ahead and get it out. This will be our method of checking. Like I said, I'll send you the email. I'll send y'all the answers too. I'll go ahead and write them down and email them as soon as we're done with class. When you're checking it, just go ahead and circle if you miss something. And it may be, if you want to do a check mark by the ones you get right, that's totally fine. So check off the ones you got right, circle the ones you got wrong, and then you'll go back and check them later. Okay, Chad?
Is this going to be lesson 23 or lesson 22?
Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and go over the homework. So I think I had already sent homework for lesson 22. Didn't I go ahead and send homework for 22? So you've got that to check. So this will be from lesson 23. All righty. So okay, help me remember, what was our assignment on page 51? Because didn't we do a couple of these in class and then you had to do the rest of them for homework? Yeah? Who wrote their homework down?
I thought for lesson 22 is page 50.
Well, for lesson 22, I already sent y'all those answers, right? Okay, so I already emailed the answers for lesson 22 for numbers 1 through 6. So you've already got those to be able to check your work. So now we're going on to lesson 23. And let's see, 23 is going to be page 51 and 52. So what was our homework? Did we have page 51 or did we finish all that in class?
I think we were supposed to do activities 2 and homework.
Okay, so homework was activities 2 and then activities 3. Is that right?
Yes. And activities 4.
And activities 4. Okay, So real quick, what I'm going to do is I'm on the screen. I'm just going to write the answers. Goodness gracious, if I can start. There we go. I'm going to write the answers. I want you to check your homework. Okay. And then if you missed something, I want you to make corrections. Okay. So get my eyes going. I'm going to go ahead and number these as 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll come down here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. The first one is 5 square root of 5. If you did not get that, circle it, mark it wrong. If you did get it right, you can put a little check mark by it or whatever you want to do. You can leave it alone. Number 2 is going to be 2/3. Again, if you missed it, mark it, go back and see if you can figure out why. If you get stuck on it, let me know and I'll be happy to help. The next one is 7 times the square root of 6 over, not 3, 2. And then the last one on this page, and I will tell you that several of these are requiring some canceling, that after you've rationalized denominators and done all that, you're having to clear some radicals. So make sure that you have everything in simplest form. 5 times the cubed root of 18 over 3. So this was page 51. I'll go ahead and leave those up for a minute so you can look at that. Number 1, 5 times the square root of 5. Number 2 is 2/3. Number 3, 7 times the square root of 6 over 2. Number 4, 5 times the cubed root of 18 over 3. Now we'll move on to page 51. Activities 3. The first one is 1. Number 2 is the square root of 5. Number 3 is 4 times the 4th root of 50. And number 4, hold up, I think I messed up on number 4 of the other one. I goodness gracious. On number 4, you're probably going, what in the whole wide world? Well, what in the whole wide world is that I took the answer from page 52, number 4, and put it for 51, number 4. So go back to your number 4 on page 51, and it's 2 times the square root of 6 over 9. So let me make sure I did that. So 5 square root of 5, 2/3, 7 times the square root of 6 over 2, and 2 times the square root of 6 over 9. 2 times the square root of 6 over 9. Fix that. All right. So we said now on 52, we have 1 square root of 5, 4 times the 4th root of 50, and then this one is 5 times the cubed root of 18 over 3. Okay. Moving on to activities 4. All right. Number 1, x equals 2. Number 2, x equals 5. Number 3, x equals 3/2 or 3 over 2, which you could also write that as 1.5 if you wanted to, or 1.5. Preferably leave it in a fraction form since we're clearing fractions. Number 4 is negative 1/3. All right, number 5, I've got 2 answers because I'm dealing with that absolute value. So x equals 5 or x equals negative 19 over 3. Then number 6, x equals 6 or x equals negative 10. Okay, so look at those, check your homework, mark if you missed anything, what you need to correct. I'll go ahead and transfer these over so I can email them to you. X equals 2, x equals 5, 3, x equals 3 halves. Number 4, x equals negative 1/3. Number 5, x equals 5 or x equals negative 19 over 3. And number 6, x equals 6 or x equals negative 10. So this was lesson 23. Okay, so let me go ahead and pull that up real quick. I will email that to you guys so you've got another copy of it. So you'll have those. If it'll pull up. I guess the internet's struggling, so I will email those in just a minute as soon as the email pulls up. All right, so quick review. Lesson 22. Come on, there we go. Lesson 22, we rationalized denominators. We said that depending on what my index is, depends on how many times I'm going to need to multiply a problem by the denominator, by the whatever the radical is in the denominator by itself over one numerator and denominator. If it's a square root, I need it twice. If it's a cubed root, I need it 3 times. If it's a 4th root, I need it 4 times, and so on and so forth, depending on whatever my root is, okay? So that was the first thing, was rationalizing the denominator. Once I have multiplied by the denominator over itself, however many times, I know that I have been able to clear my radical in the denominator, but now I have radicals in my numerator that I'm going to have to start working with and simplifying. In lesson 23, we worked with dividing radicals, and we learned that we could first start by dividing the coefficients. Then we could work with dividing the radicals. When I divide the radicals, it makes them smaller and easier to deal with. Once I've divided, then I can rationalize my denominator if I need to. After I've rationalized my denominator, I would go ahead and simplify as much as I can, simplify coefficients as well as radicals, okay? Now, lesson 23, we are going to go on to multiplying radical expressions. So that's where we're starting today, is lesson 23, multiplying radical expressions.
You mean lesson 24?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Lesson 24. It's right there in front of me. I'm just saying it wrong. Okay. When multiplying radical expressions, use the distributive property. Multiply constants and coefficients to get the new coefficient. Multiply radicands to get the new radicand. As always, simplify your answer. So if I wanted to break that into step by step, okay, use distributive property. Multiply constants and coefficients to get the new coefficient. So multiply. So I'll just put multiply the term outside. Well, I guess that goes along with distributive property, is multiplying the term outside by each term on the inside. So it says multiply coefficients. Why am I having trouble today saying exactly what it needs to say? Multiply constants and coefficients to get the new coefficient. And then it says multiply radicands to get the new radicand. And then 4, as always, simplify. Okay, we're using that distributive property. We're going to multiply by each term, and then we're going to simplify. Okay, so let's look at our example they've given us. I have the square root of 2 times 3 plus the square root of 6. So notice here, I have to start by multiplying the square root of 2 times 3. When I multiply the square root of 2 times 3, that is going to become 3 times the square root of 2. I always want my whole number to be on the left side, my radical to be on the right side. Now remember, that is not going to end up being the square root of 6 because I'm multiplying a whole number times a radical. These are not like terms, so they cannot be combined completely. I just put them side by side as a multiplication problem because remember, when I look at this right here, 3 times the square root of 2 is 3 times the square root of 2. Okay, I can't multiply it together because I have a whole number and a radical. Now, what I can multiply together is the square root of 2 times the square root of 6. Okay, so here I've got 3 times the square root of 2. I've got my plus sign here, so that's what goes in between them. And then I have the square root of 2 times the square root of 6. Remember, those can go underneath the same radical, and then I can multiply them together. So that's what they've done right here. Now, one of the things that I told you guys is before you actually multiply them together, when you're doing this, is go ahead and leave them as prime factors. And that would keep you from having to do as much work because you can see here, they had to go ahead and break down the square root of 12 into 2 times 2 times 3. So after I have multiplied here, what I would do, I'm going to bring it down here where I've got 3 times the square root of 2 plus 2 times 2 times 3. I would skip this part right here and I wouldn't even write it as that. I would go ahead and come on down and put 3 times the square root of 2 plus and go ahead and break down the square root of 2 and the square root of 6 as radicals. That way I can see it a little bit easier and know that I can simplify this radical. I've got two 2's here, so I know that those can come out. So I've got 3 times the square root of 2 plus that 2 comes out as a whole number, and all I have under my radical is the square root of 3. Okay? Because my radicals are different, I cannot combine any further. So this is my final answer, 3 times the square root of 2 plus 2 times the square root of 3. That's all I can do. Okay, so let's go through these. I'm going to erase these notes that I put over here so I can write. Okay, so again, the first thing I'm going to do is use my distributive property. So the first thing I did is I have the square root of 5 times 4. So I'm going to write that as 4 times the square root of 5 because 4 is my whole number. It needs to go before the radical. I'm going to transfer my plus sign over. And now I have the square root of 5 times the square root of 2. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and rewrite 4 times the square root of 5 plus. Underneath my radical, I'm going to put 5 times 2. I'm going to combine them under the same radical. 5 and 2 are both prime numbers, so I know that there's nothing I can do to simplify any further. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this as 4 times the square root of 5 plus the square root of 10. Any questions on that? All right, let's look at the next one. I'm going to start with the square root of 6 times 7. Then I have the square root of 6 times the square root of 3. So the square root of 6 times 7 is going to give me 7 times the square root of 6 plus the square root of 6 times the square root of 3. Whoop, that's a 6. And I'll go ahead and make that, well, I'll look at 7 times the square root of 6. I know that the square root of 6 is as small as it can go. There's nothing I can simplify there. But now when I've got 6 times 3 under my radical. So now I'm going to break down under my radical. I'm going to make 6 2 times 3, and then I already had a 3 there. Okay. So this is where I'm breaking down. 6 becomes 2 times 3. That 3 I already had was there. So now I've got my prime factors listed out. I can see that I've got 2 3's that can come out as a whole number. So I have 7 times the square root of 6 plus my 3 comes out as a whole number. My 2 is left under my radical, and there's my solution. Any questions on that? All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at activities 2. We will go ahead and do the left-hand side right now, and the right-hand side will become homework. So working on the left-hand side, distribute the square root of 3 to 7 and the square root of 5. The square root of 3 times 7 is 7 times the square root of 3 plus, now I have the square root of 3 times the square root of 5. Both of those are prime factors, so I know that when I go to my next step, there's not going to be any breaking them down. So I can just put them under the same radical as 7, times, you've got 7 times the square root of 3 plus the square root of 15. 15, my prime factors are 3 and 5. I know I'm not going to have any buddies to pull out, so this is my final answer. Be sure to stop me and ask questions if you have them. Okay, if you don't understand where I got something or you don't understand why I've done something, please, please, please let me know. Okay. Next one, square root of 5 times 2. square root of 5 times the square root of 7. The square root of 5 times 2 is going to give me 2 times the square root of 5 plus the square root of 5 times the square root of 7. Again, I'm dealing with two prime factors. I know that when I multiply them together, that's all I can do because I can't break it down any. So I end up with 3 times the square root of 5 plus the square root of 35. The next one, square root of 2 times 6, the square root of 2 times the square root of 3. The square root of 2 times 6 is going to be 6 times the square root of 2 plus the square root of 2 times the square root of 3. Both are prime factors, so I'm just going to multiply them together for my answer. All right, let's look at the next one. Square root of 3 times 4, the square root of 3 times the square root of 12. The square root of 3 times 4 is going to give me 4 times the square root of 3 plus the square root of 3 times the square root of 12. This one we're going to do a little different because the square root of 3 is prime. The square root of 12 is not. So when we put it underneath the radical sign, I'm going to go ahead and list it as prime factors. So I already had my 3, which is right there. Now I'm going to break down 12. Okay. So I know my smallest prime factor of 12 is 2, and that's 2 times 6, and 6 is 2 times 3. So we can see that 12 became 2 times 2 times 3. I'm dealing with a square root here. So I need 2 buddies. I can see that I've got 2 2's together right here, and I have a 3 and a 3. Okay. So I've got 4 times the square root of 3 plus my 2's come out as a group. My 3 comes out as a group, so I can multiply those together. So I have 4 times the square root of 3 plus 2 times 3 is 6. You could leave it like that, or you could put 6 plus 4 times the square root of 3. It doesn't matter. Commutative property tells me that the order that I add in does not matter. Me personally, I'm keeping it like the top one just because that's exactly as it follows in this problem right here. Okay. So in that one, when we multiplied each thing together, we found that when we multiplied the square root of 3 times the square root of 12, 12 is not a prime factor. So I had to break down the square root of 12 into 2 times 2 times 3. Once I did that, I could see my buddies that could pull out. And then, so I did that. Okay. I'm going to erase this here so it doesn't look like a fraction. Oh man, made all of it go away. So we had 4 times the square root of 3 plus 6. Any questions on that one? That one was a little different.
Can you not add them?
I cannot, because this is 4 times the square root of 3. This is 6. This is a number with a radical, and this is just a number. They are not like terms. The only way I could add these together is if 6 had a square root of 3 with it. It does not, so they have to stay apart. I'm glad you asked that. Okay, I want you to go ahead and let's work through the square root of 5 times 6 and the square root of 5 times 10. I want you to look at the previous example. If you get stuck, this one is going to be requiring some simplifying just like we did in the previous example. So go ahead and work this one.
Jennifer,
Yes,
can I go to the bathroom?
absolutely. All right, let's go over it. Hopefully you've had enough time to kind of work through it. So the first thing we do is the square root of 5 times 6, which will be 6 times the square root of 5, plus the square root of 5 times the square root, times the square root of 10. I can look at that and see that my 6 times the square root of 5, the square root of 5 is already in simplest form. Now I've got the square root of 5 times the square root of 10. And so this is where I want to go ahead and break down 10 into prime factors. So I had a 5 to begin with, so I just rewrite that one. 10 is going to break down into 2 times 5. So now I can see that I've got 2 5s under my radical. So that means that they are going to come out. So I've got 6. What did I do? 6 times the square root of 5 plus my 5 came out, and I've got the square root of 2. So there's my final answer. I cannot combine them together because my radicals are different. Remember when we learned adding radicals that the only way I could add is if the radicals were the same. Questions on that one? Is that what you got for your answer? If not, do you see what your mistake was? Do you see what happened?
I got it, but I did it a different way.
Okay, what'd you do?
I just, instead of simplifying 10, I multiplied it with 5, and then I simplified 50.
Okay, so you looked at that and said, okay, you've got 50, and then you broke down 50 into 2 times 5 times 5. That's perfectly fine. All right, go ahead and do the last one. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at this one. I'm multiplying the square root of 2 times 9, so that's going to be 9 times the square root of 2. Bring down my plus sign. Now I have the square root of 2 times the square root of 6. Square root of 6 is not in simplest form, so I'm going to go ahead and break it down. And I've got 9 times the square root of 2 plus the square root of 2 times 3. I'm able to see that I've got 2 buddies here that can come out. So I have 9 times the square root of 2 plus 2 times the square root of 3. Everything, my radicals are in simplest form. They are not the same, so I cannot add it together. So there's my final answer. Any questions on those? All righty, so we said the second half of activities 2 will be our first part of homework. Then activities 3 is going to be reviewing lesson 22. Okay, so this will be lesson 23. So go back to lesson 23 if you need to. And then activities 4, working with clearing our fractions and decimals, continuing to practice on that. I will send the homework answers, and I will do that probably right after we finish class. I'll go ahead and get those sent to you. I'll go ahead and send them with, since I haven't been able to send lesson 23, I'll go ahead and send all of it in one email. So I'll do lesson 24 and lesson 25 that we'll have in just a moment. All right. It is 11 o'clock, so we've got about 10 minutes till break time. So hopefully I will not forget to give us a break today. We're going to move on to lesson 25. Now, like in lesson 24, we multiplied and we had a number outside of parentheses that had to multiply by each term inside parentheses using the distributive property. When I have multiple terms inside parentheses and I'm dividing by a term on the outside, I have to remember that I have to divide each term. So I need to divide each term in the dividend by the divisor. Rationalize the denominator if necessary, and then simplify. So, step 1, divide each term inside parentheses by the term outside parentheses. Okay, so that's step 1. I'm going to divide each term inside parentheses by the term outside parentheses. Step 2, rationalize denominator if necessary. Step 3, simplify answer. Okay, so here are our steps. That's what we're going to go through with our sample problem. So notice here, that means I'm going to have 3 times the square root of 2 divided by the square root of 2 plus 2 times the square root of 3 divided by the square root of 2. I have to divide each term by the square root of 2. So that's what they've done down here. And you can see that when I have the square root of 2 over the square root of 2, those cancel. So I'm left with 3 plus 2 times the square root of 3 over the square root of 2. Remember that radical in the denominator is a problem. I have to rationalize it, but only for that problem. I don't have to do anything to the 3. The 3 is just fine to hang out, but I don't want to forget him in my answer, okay? So to rationalize the denominator, I know that I've got the square root of 2. So I've got to multiply by the square root of 2 divided by the square root of 2, or square root of 2 over the square root of 2. So now, remember, my 3 is just kind of hanging out here. I'm not doing anything to him but transferring him over each time I rewrite something, okay? So when I multiply 2 times the square root of 3 times the square root of 2, that becomes 2 times the square root of 6. When I multiply the square root of 2 by the square root of 2, that comes out as a whole number 2. Okay? Now, I've got 3 plus 2 times the square root of 6 over 2. Notice that those 2's can cancel. So all I have left is the square root of 6. So my answer is 3 plus the square root of 6. So we're taking our skills that we have previously learned about rationalizing the denominator, goodness. And then we're putting this with the skills of dividing, okay? So we will divide each term first, rationalize the denominator if needed next, and then simplify my answer. Basically, simplifying means I'm going to look at that radical, see if it can be broken down into simpler terms. Square root of 6 cannot, so I just leave it like it is. So let's use those steps to work with our classwork. I'm going to erase over here so I can have some work room. All right. So I've got the square root. Well, I don't. I've got 3 times the square root of 10 over the square root of 2 plus 2 times the square root of 14 over the square root of 2. Now remember back in, what was it, lesson 23, dividing radicals. This is where I'm looking. If I had constants in both my numerator and denominator, I would divide constants. I don't, so now I can just divide my radicals. My first one, I've got the square root of 10 and the square root of 2. 2 and 10 are both divisible by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So I cancel those. Now I have 2 times the square root of 14 over the square root of 2. Excuse me. They are both divisible by 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. 14 divided by 2 is 7. Okay, so notice now in my denominator, I've been able to break each of those down, and I just have the square root of 1. So I've got 3 times the square root of 5 over 1 plus 2. Oh, where'd my 7 go? Plus 2 times the square root of 7. Whoop, I'm running out of space. Over 1. So those ones will just go away. So I've got 3 times the square root of 5 plus 2 times the square root of 7. There's nothing I can do to combine them there because 3 is with a square root of 5, 2 is with a square root of 7. They are not the same, so I cannot combine them. Any questions on that? All right, let's look at the next one. Again, I've got 2 terms divided by a term. So I have 5 times the square root of 6 divided by the square root of 3 plus 3 times the square root of 2 divided by the square root of 3. The first thing I'm going to do is divide if possible. So I can see that in my first one, under my radical, I have a 6. And then in my denominator, I have a 3. Both of those are divisible by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. In my next one, I have a square root of 2 and a square root of 3. Those cannot be simplified. There's nothing I can do there. So I'm going to rewrite my first one where I have 5 times the square root of 2 plus 3 times the square root of 2 divided by the square root of 3. This guy is okay. I don't have to do anything to him, but I have to make sure that I don't forget him and that he's written in every step that I do from here on. Okay? What is a problem is that square root of 3 in my denominator, so I'm going to have to rationalize that. So I'm going to start by rewriting. I'll come down here. 5 times the square root of 2 plus 3 times the square root of 2 over the square root of 3. Now I'm needing to rationalize that denominator, so I'm multiplying by the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. Again, my 5 times the square root of 2 is just hanging out there. So I bring him over, plus. Now I multiply numerator by numerator. So now I'm going to have 3 times the square root of 6 over the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 becomes a whole number 3. Now here I can see that I've got a 3 in my numerator and a 3 in my denominator. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, 3 divided by 3 is 1. So I've been able to simplify that. So now all I've got left is 5 times the square root of 2 plus the square root of 6. Questions on that one? It's just a process. It's a step-by-step thing, okay? Think through each step that you have to take to get to your final answer. The first one, you're dividing each term in parentheses by the term outside of parentheses. When I divide, I know that I can go ahead and cancel while my radicals are underneath, where my numbers are still under the radicals. I'm able to do that canceling. Once I've canceled and I've divided everything, if I have a radical in my denominator, I must rationalize my denominator. Once I do that, after I've gotten everything out of my denominator, or my radical out of the denominator, I have to simplify as much as possible. Simplify could involve canceling terms in my numerator and denominator, or it could involve simplifying that radical. Okay, so it is 11:11. We'll go ahead and take a 5-minute break, and we will come back and work on some activities. Okay, so go ahead and take a break. All right, we'll get started back. I've gotten all your homework answers written out, so I'm gonna get ready and send those over. So 23, 24, 25. All righty, so let's get back to looking at activities 2 on the left-hand side. That's going to be on page 55. Okay, so real quick, let's review our steps. Step 1, we are dividing each term inside parentheses by the term outside parentheses. Step 2, rationalize the denominator if necessary. Step 3, simplify anything that needs to be simplified. Okay? So step 1, I am dividing, and actually here, if you want to do it like this, you can divide by the square root of 3, divide by the square root of 3. Okay, so now when I'm dividing, I just go ahead and cancel what's under the radicals if I can. So I know that 3 divided by 3 is 1, 12 divided by 3 is 4. 3 divided by 3 is 1, 6 divided by 3 is 2. So now I can rewrite this as 5 times the square root of 4 plus 3 times the square root of 2. Remember here, if I've got the square root of 1, that's equal to 1. And the square root of 1 is 1, so I don't have to worry about my denominators anymore. Now, what I do have to worry about is, remember, my final step is to simplify. This is where I'm looking to see, is there anything that I can simplify within my answer? And so if I look at this answer, I can see I have the square root of 4 right here. Hopefully you know some of your perfect squares, and you know that the square root of 4 is 2. So you don't even have to go through the process of listing out prime factors, finding buddies, and all that good stuff. So what I'm going to do is, I know that the square root of 4 is 2. So 5 times 2 plus 3 times the square root of 2, which means I have 10 plus 3 times the square root of 2. Okay, so remember, my simplification step could be my first term or my second term. I've got to make sure I can simplify all of them. Okay, so I had the square root of 4. The square root of 4 is 2. When that 2 comes out, it multiplies by the 5 that was already there. Any questions on that one? Let's look at the next
How do you
one.
get a 10?
Okay, so like I said, this right here, I'll go ahead and write it underneath it so you can see it. Means I have 5 times the square root of 2 times 2, right? So that means that I've got 2 buddies that come out as a whole number 2. So when that 2 comes out, it multiplies by the 5 that was already there, and 5 times 2 is 10. So basically, I've broken down that square root of 4. It becomes 2, and 5 times 2 is 10. You see that?
Yes.
Perfect. Any other questions? If you don't see it, please let me know so I can try to help you see it. All right, let's look at the next one. Again, if I want to, I can go ahead and write my problem by just dividing by the square root of 5, divide by the square root of 5. So now I can see in my first term, there is nothing that will cancel. I have a whole number 4 and the square root of 7 in my numerator and the square root of 5 in my denominator. 7 and 5 are not both divisible by any numbers other than 1. But in my second term, I can see that I've got the square root of 5 in the numerator and the square root of 5 in my denominator, so those will cancel. So now I'm left with 4 times the square root of 7 over the square root of 5 plus 6. So now this is a little different than what we've been doing because now it's my first term that has something that has to be dealt with, and my second term is just along for the ride. I've got to keep letting him hang out there. He's finished. So that means I've got 4 times the square root of 7 over the square root of 5. I've got to rationalize this denominator by multiplying by the square root of 5 over the square root of 5. But I still have plus 6 out here. I cannot forget that. So now that is going to equal, when I've got 4 times the square root of 7 times the square root of 5 over my whole number 5. Now I can look at 7. I know 7 is prime and 5 is also prime. So there's nothing I'm going to be able to do to break down that answer. I forgot my plus 6. So I know that I'm just going to have 4 times the square root of 35 over 5 plus 6. And that's my final answer. Because these are both prime, I just go ahead and combine them under the radical as the square root of 35. Is everybody good with that one? Okay, let's look at the last one on this in these activities. I want you to go ahead and work this one on your own. Go ahead and set up the problem, rationalize denominators if you need to, and simplify. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at this one. So I'm dividing each term by the square root of 6. My first one is 3 times the square root of 5 divided by the square root of 6. There is nothing I can divide into both 5 and 6, so it's going to stay the same. 3 times the square root of 5 over square root of 6 plus. Looking at my next term, I have the square root of 10 and the square root of 6. They are both divisible by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So now I can go back, and I've got 8 times the square root of 5 over the square root of 3. All righty. So here, notice I've got a square root of 6 in one of them, square root of 3 in the other one. All right. So I'm going to need to go ahead and rationalize both of these. So I think the way to do this that's going to help you see it the best is just go ahead and do 3 times the square root of 5 over the square root of 6 times the square root of 6 over the square root of 6 plus 8 times the square root of, whoop, that's supposed to be a 5, over the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. So basically what I had to do here is, because I've got the square root of 6 here, I've got to rationalize by doing the square root of 6 over the square root of 6. Here, I've got the square root of 3, so I'm rationalizing there for that one. Is everybody good so far? So then I know that I'm going to have 3 times the square root of 5 times the square root of 6 over 6 plus 8 times the square root of 5 times the square root of 3 over 3. So now I'm looking to see, is there going to be anything that I can do to my radicals in the numerator to be able to simplify? And I see that I am going to have, well, first of all, I can look at this and I know that my prime factors of 6 are going to be 2 times 3, right? So when I look at those as prime factors, I would, when I multiply 2 times 3, I'd have 2 times 3 times 5. There's not going to be anything that I can bring out from under that. So I'm going to end up with 3 times the square root of 30 over 6 plus 8 times the square root of 15 over 3. I've rationalized my denominators. Now I need to make sure that I have everything in simplest form. So on this one, I have got to simplify here. I have a 6 in the denominator and a 3 in the numerator. So 6 divided by 3 is 2 and 3 divided by 3 is 1. I have an 8 in my numerator and a 3 in the denominator of my next term. So there's nothing I can do to simplify that. So now I've ended up with the square root of 30 over 2 plus 8 times the square root of 15 over 3. Questions on that? So we've looked at examples when I had to rationalize with my term on the right-hand side. Okay, that was in our homework and in the activities. We had to rationalize in this one. We had to rationalize the term on the right-hand side. We looked at one where we had to rationalize my term on the left-hand side, okay, on this one. Now we've looked at, what do I do when I rationalize both of them? We had 2 terms we need to rationalize. So sometimes it's going to be the term on the left of my plus sign. It may be the term on the right of my plus sign, or it may be maybe both of them that I have to rationalize. Any questions on that? All righty. What I want you to do is I want you to go ahead, and this is going to be part of your homework, but we're going to go ahead and get a jump on it right now. So go ahead and get out a sheet of paper. Go ahead and head it for lesson 25. I know you'll need to go back and do lesson 22, but that will be a separate sheet of paper anyway. It all wouldn't go on the same sheet of paper. So go ahead and get out a sheet of paper. We're going to head it for lesson 25. Let me go ahead and get me a piece of paper. Okay, so again, make sure you got your name. That's going to be lesson 25. We'll start with our lesson notes. So we said step 1 is going to be divide each term inside parentheses by the term outside parentheses. Divide each term inside parentheses by the term outside parentheses. Step 2, rationalize denominator. What I'm going to do here is, since we've learned that it may be both denominators that we have to rationalize, I'm going to write the word denominator and put an S in parentheses, because it could be just one denominator. It could be two denominators. So, okay, that's why I'm putting that S in parentheses. So rationalize denominator, denominators, if necessary. Not an I. Rationalize denominators if necessary. And then step 3, simplify. And that means simplify each term. Could be the term on the left, could be the term on the right, it could be the radicals, whatever. Simplify. All righty, so what we're going to do right now is, this will be page 55, and we're doing the right column. And notice that on those, since it's going top to bottom, I'm just going to number those. So number 1 is going to be 6 times the square root of 18 plus 4 times the square root of 15 divided by the square root of 3. I want you to go ahead and work that one. If you have questions while you're working, let me know. I'll be happy to walk you through it and help you. Look at those steps that you've written at the top of your paper. Once you finish that one, you can go on. Make sure to skip a line between your problems. Number 2. 2 times the square root of 7 plus 9 times the square root of 21 divided by the square root of 14. Work that one. Go on down. Number 3. 7. So you're working those 3 problems. Getting a start on that homework.
When is this homework due?
This is all the homework that when we return to co-op on the Monday after fall break. So all of this will be due on the Monday after fall break.
So no homework is due next week.
Next week being fall break, there'll be nothing, no. So remember with our new process, we'll go ahead and turn everything in when we're in person. So our next in-person date will be that Monday. So that means starting with, I think it was it lesson 22 that we started the new homework process? So you'll be handing in homework for lessons 22, 23, 24, and 25. Alrighty, so as you're finishing those up, what we're going to do is we'll go back real quick. We'll make sure we've got our homework answers. I don't want to start another section today. So what we'll do is in a minute, I'll go through and make sure everybody's got their homework assignments, knows what they need to do. We'll make sure we've numbered all of our pages properly since our pages aren't numbered. Then you can continue working after we've gone over all of that. If you want to stay logged in and work so you can ask me questions and ask for help, you can. If you want to go ahead and be done early and get your homework done later, you're welcome to do that as well. So, but what we'll do first before anybody signs out is let's go ahead and go back through what our homework assignments are to make sure everybody's got those. So we're going to back up. I just emailed the homework for lessons 23, 24, and 25. Okay. So we went ahead and went over the answers for lessons 23, but I've emailed those already. Lesson 24, and this is on page 53. So if you want to turn to page 53, these will just be numbered top to bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so you've got 6 problems top to bottom on page 53. On page 54, we'll number them side to side. 1, 2, 3, 4 for activities 3. Then for activities 4, again, we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you'll write activities 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, activities 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, be sure to break them up by activities numbers when you label them on your homework. So that is on page 54. Page 55, what we were just working on right now. So this is homework. We've got 1, 2, 3 for page 55, lesson 25. Then let's move on to page 56. We'll have activities 3 and 4. So activities 3, we'll have 1, 2. Activities 4, we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4. So that'll be your numbering for those. Okay. Any of that you would like me to go over? Okay, so now that you know that your homework is page 53, activities 2, the right-hand column. Page 54, activities 3 and 4. Page 55, activities 2, right-hand column. And page 56, activities 3 and 4. You are welcome to stay logged in and work on this homework, and I'm here for help. Or if you want to log off and be done early today and work on your homework later, that is up to you. I've already emailed you the answers. Please do the work before you look at the answers, okay? If you make mistakes, be sure to make your check your work, make your corrections, all right? And then if you have any questions about the format of all of that, just know that all of this is due. You will be handing in all of these pieces of paper, lessons 22, 23, 24, 25. You will have 4 lessons to turn in on the Monday we return from co-op. I think that's the 12th. You'll hand all of these in. I would like them to be put in order, stapled or paper clipped in order. Remember, you've got your lesson notes, you've got your work, then you'll have corrections if you need them. Okay? If at any point you have
I thought it was like the 18th.
Pardon?
I
I'm
thought
sorry.
it was like the 18th or
Next
something.
Monday is the 12th. I'm sorry. So it is. It's like isn't that right? Let me look at my dates just to make sure. Sorry, I'm off.
Or 19th, I don't know.
Let's see. I'll pull up my calendar real quick just to make sure. The Monday we return is Monday, October 19th. Okay, Monday, October 19th. So Monday, October 19th, lesson 22, 23, 24, 25. 4 lessons. You'll have your work and corrections all in order, stapled or clipped together, ready to turn in. If you have any questions, if you get stuck on anything and need help, please let me know. If not, you can stay and work on whatever homework you need to work on, or you may go. If you leave, I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you have a great fall break, and I will see you Monday the 19th.
I have a question.
Yeah, what you got?
On page 56, activities 3, number 2,
Uh-huh.
would you do absolute values first or the parentheses?
Yes, you're going to have to distribute first. Good. So you're going to distribute first. So then you've got the absolute value of 6x plus 4 minus 2 equals 6x plus 2. Then remember, this is where you've got to isolate. So then you have the absolute value of 6x plus 4 equals 6x plus 4. Now this one's a little tricky, so I'm glad you asked about it. Notice here that when I take my absolute value off, you're going to have 6x plus 4 equals 6x plus 4. If something equals itself, basically what would happen is if you started solving this, you're going to end up with x equals x. So when you end up with something like this, your solution is all real numbers, because that means I could put any number in and it's going to make a true solution. Okay, so that was a good one to ask about. I think that
Do you have
was,
to do the negative positive thing again?
well, that was, sorry, that's for the positive side. So yes, so that would be your positive side. So then when you do your negative side, you would have 6x plus 4 is equal to, actually, let me rewrite it a little bit so I can give myself some more space. Let me go back. So you'd have 6x plus 4 is equal to negative 6x plus 4. So then that's where then you would distribute that negative. So you'd have 6x plus 4 is equal to negative 6x minus 4. And then you would continue solving on and see what you get there. Okay. So you've got your two equations. That first one, when you end up with x equals x, that's going to be all real numbers. Okay. See, and y'all get the benefit of knowing that since y'all decided to stay around and work a little bit. Everybody else is going to be going, what?
I'm stuck on the negative part now.
Okay. Are you talking about on this same one?
Yeah.
Okay. So we said that once we distributed that negative, that would become negative 6x minus 4. Okay. So that means I would add 6x to each side. So what's 6x plus 6x? What's 6 plus 6?
12x.
12x plus 4 equals negative 4. What am I going to move now?
4.
What kind? Okay, so I'm going to subtract 4 from each side. So 12x is equal to, what is negative 4 minus 4?
Negative 8.
Good. Now what you going to do?
Divided by 12.
Good. So x is equal to -8/12. Is that in simplest form?
No.
No. So what could it reduce to?
-2/3.
Awesome. Very good. Where'd you get stuck?
I instead started trying to move the 4 instead of the 6 first.
Okay, and how are you trying to move the 4?
Well, I tried first moving the -4, but then I got stuck. Then I tried moving the +4, but then I got stuck.
Okay. When you were moving the -4, were you adding it?
Yeah.
Okay, so real quick, what I want to do is let's go ahead and look at that just like you were doing it. Okay, so you said you had 12x plus 4 equals -4. Tell me what you were doing. I'm sorry, not yet. I mean, get that. Cancel. Cancel. You had 6x plus 4 equals -6x minus 4. So tell me what you were doing.
And I added 4 to get rid of the -4.
So you add 4 and add 4. So you have 6x plus, what did you get on that? Huh?
8.
8 equals -6x. Then what did you do?
Well, I stopped because I wasn't sure what to do.
Okay. So then what you could have done is if you subtracted 6x here and subtracted 6x here, you're going to equal 8 equals -12x. You're still going to divide by -12. So you'd have 8 or -8/12 equals x, and that would still reduce to -2/3. Okay, so either way, you would end up getting the same answer. It doesn't matter if you move the 4 first or the 6x first. You just have to, when you move it, you just have to use the proper operations. But good deal. Keep going. Let me know if you have other questions. We've got about 5 more minutes left in class.
You only need to write notes once, right?
Yeah, when you write the notes, it's only for the new lesson. Okay. You
Okay.
can go back and look at what you need if you don't remember how to do, if it's a review. But yeah, you don't have to you don't have to do notes for the other sections, just for the new lesson.
Okay. Well, I meant like if you started on one piece of paper and then you had to use another piece, but you didn't have to put notes on the other piece.
No. You can just look back to your other piece of paper if you need your notes.
Okay.
Bye, Miss Fountain. Thank you.
Bye, hon. Have a great break. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. All right, Zoe, you good?
Lost track of time.
It's fine. No worries. If you have any questions or anything, let me know. Okay. And I hope you
Yeah.
have a great break, and I will see you in a couple of weeks.
You too.
All right. Bye,
Bye.
hon.
Bye.